Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Victoria Rogers. I'm the Membership and Community Relations Specialist with the Greater Scranton Chamber of Commerce. Today we have Heather Murray. She's the Manager of Community Relations with Advantage Credit Counseling Service. She's out of actually Pittsburgh, PA, where there's no snow today, but she has birds singing out her window, which is a sure sign of spring coming. Actually, I think it's 25 days today we have spring. But we're here to learn personal finance management 101 during a pandemic. So Heather, welcome. Thank you so much for being our speaker today. And I'm going to let you go ahead with your presentation.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks, Victoria. Thanks everyone for having me here today. Like Victoria said, we're going to talk about Personal Financial Management 101, which is basically a guide to better money management. We'll talk about budgeting and credit reports and credit scores, and then give some specific COVID-related tips today. So our objectives today, we're going to look at budgeting basics. We're going to talk about why you should budget and why tracking your expenses is important. We'll go through some money management tips and techniques to help you reduce some expenses and increase your savings. We'll talk about an emergency savings fund and why that is really a critical piece to your financial stability. We'll go through your credit, how to understand your credit report and where to access that. And then we'll also talk about your credit score and how that score can be calculated. So the first part is budgeting basics. So this is what sometimes we all feel about when we're talking about money. Money talks, but mind just waves goodbye. Sometimes it's in and out quicker than we even can realize. But that's really where budgeting comes in. Budgeting can help you with, several tools, into managing your money. It helps you figure out where your money is going and how best to manage it each month. Budgeting can help you prevent overspending because when you know what you have coming in and going out, sometimes you're in better control of how you're spending your money. It helps with your cash flow. We don't always think about when we should pay our bills out of which paycheck each month. And budgeting helps you figure that out so you're not shorting yourself at any point in time. And then budgeting also helps you put your money to better use because when you realize where your money is going, then you're in control to make some changes on how to better spend your money. So when we're getting started with budgeting, we really have to ground ourselves, first of all, in our wants versus our needs. Our needs are the things that we really need to consider first in our budget. These are our top priority expenses. These are the things that we always pay first, no matter what. And they really, not to be overly dramatic, but they can, help secure our survival. Those are our housing expenses, our utility expenses, our food costs. These are the things that we have to pay no matter what. And then after we go through our wants and we make sure that those after we go through our needs and we make sure those are covered, then we can start to consider our wants and prioritize what is important to us. So these are things that we like to have, that we like to do, but we don't necessarily need to do. So a gym membership, sometimes our entertainment costs, sometimes, things like cable service now, we can think about how to do that differently. That has become more of a want now than a need. So these are the things that we like to have as part of our daily living, but we don't necessarily need to have. So some keys to budgeting success, and this is really our first step in figuring out our budget, is to pay attention to how you spend your money. So you really want to track your expenses. We're coming to the end of February, so this would be a good thing to start on March 1st. Track your expenses for 30 days. This really helps you identify some areas where you can reduce your spending. And then it also helps you accurately project your expenses that you have each month. You want to keep track for 30 days. I mean, that's really will give you a good look on how you're spending your money. Notate everything you spend your money on. Sometimes it's easy because most of us use debit cards now, so we can just go through our bank statements. You can keep your receipts for all of your purchases. and then just kind of notate, what you're spending each week and where you're spending it. Or you can use a notebook to write everything down. You can use spending apps. If you Google or go on your app store on your smartphone, spending apps, tracking expenses apps, and there are several out there that are pretty easy to use. But the thing is, you want to record this and keep track no matter what the amount is. So it can be if you're in the office and you use the vending machine every day, you want to keep track of that. If you drive through and get a $2 Diet Coke from the drive through every day, you want to keep track of that. So it's really no matter how small the purchase is, because the thing is, these small expenses can add up over time. So, like I said, small purchases can add up to big expenses. When we think about some smaller things that we buy, but when we look at it over a longer course of time, these can be impactful on our budget. So, let's say we buy a lottery ticket, $2 a day, 7 days a week. That's $56 a month, $672 after a year. And that's really kind of how you want to look at when you're tracking your expenses. Look at what these things total over the course of time, because $672, I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at. That can be used to make an extra mortgage payment maybe, or just to put that extra money into savings. If we like our gourmet coffee, if our Starbucks, $4 a day could be a cheap drink there. 5 days a week, that's $80 a month, and that's almost $1,000 a year. So, that's pretty substantial. Cigarettes, not many people smoke anymore, but some people still do. So that's $10 a day, about, if you're smoking a pack a day. Or you can equate that to a fast food meal, or something that you just might randomly spend $10 a day on. 7 days a week, $282 a month. That's over $3,300 in a year's time. And that's really significant. That can be, a major bill that gets paid off, a cheap used car, or a really good start to an emergency savings fund. So when we track our expenses, these are the kinds of things that we want to glean from that data that we collect. It might not be cigarettes, or it might not be lottery tickets for you, but it could be something. And that's what you want to identify when you track your expenses. When I first started tracking my expenses, when I started at the agency, more than 10 years ago, what was surprising to me was how many times I stopped at the grocery store. And I would run in after work and, with the intention of getting one or two things, but then $40 later. So I was still doing, a big shop on the weekend. And then after work, a few times a week, $40 easy. So I'm over adding another $100 to my grocery budget. So that was something that, I made a conscious effort to cut back on, look at how I was shopping on the weekend, and really refine how I make my grocery list now. It's more of a detailed look at everything that we're actually going to need for the week, instead of just jotting a few items down here or there. So these are the kinds of things that you want to look for, some habits that you can change that really add money back into your monthly budget. So another important piece to your budgeting success is your savings. When we do a budget counseling session with a consumer at Advantage Credit Counseling Service, we go through their income, their expenses, and their debts. And when we look at our worksheet that we provide to them, savings is near the top of that worksheet, because we want you to make savings a priority in your monthly budget. So it's not above your housing costs, but it's right after that. Savings is really a critical piece to our financial stability. The easiest way to start to save is to have it automatically deducted from your paycheck. So that's, the save it before you see it method. You can just have it taken out, and most of the time you won't even miss that it's gone and it's already, building and growing for you. What you want to look at is 5 to 10% of your net income. So whatever, you're actually getting in your paycheck after taxes. And, that can vary depending on what we're making each week or bi-monthly. And you want to start with what you're comfortable with, start small. Don't think of the end goal necessarily. Think of what is realistic for you to accomplish, that you're going to stick with, and that you're not going to be dipping into, every couple weeks, because you're really, trying too much too quickly, and you're kind of defeating the purpose then. So start small, start with what you're comfortable with, and you can always add to it, as time goes on. And really, after you track your expenses, you can look at areas where you can cut back on your spending and put that instead towards your savings. So, when I say start small, you're saving a small amount, but it does grow over time. So if you're saving $20 a month, that's $240 a year. $40 a month, $480 a year. $80 a month is almost $1,000 a year, and $100 per month is $1,200 a year. So, depending on how you get paid, and what your spending priorities are, sometimes these are things that are easy to hit. We can easily incorporate this into our monthly budget, and just try and save something. It's not going to send you on vacation. It's probably not going to buy you a new car, but it can help you, if you have an unexpected cost, or, maybe you're saving for back to school shopping, saving for the holidays for next year. It really gives you a little bit of cushion to prevent you from going into debt over an unexpected expense. And that is where we want to talk about our emergency savings fund. That, like I said before, is a key piece to our financial stability. When you hear experts on TV, especially during the pandemic, we heard a lot about this. We want to have that emergency savings fund to fall back on. The pandemic was the greatest of all unexpected events. And if you found yourself in the situation where you didn't have an emergency savings fund and you were suddenly out of a job, the way the unemployment system didn't really operate, or still isn't always operating at the optimal level, having that emergency savings fund probably really helped you out in those first few months, even probably now. But the experts, what they recommend is 3 months of living expenses. So when you look at your budget and you think about everything that you're spending money on, not your wants, this is primarily, your needs, you want to times that by 3, and that's what your goal for your emergency savings fund is. Now, that is a really excellent thing to work for, but sometimes it is really difficult to achieve. Because it is a lot of money. When we think about our mortgage, our utilities, any loan payments that we have, it can be in the thousands of dollars. So what you want to do, though, is you want to start with any amount, because something is always better than nothing, especially when it comes to savings. And these are things that can be used for any unexpected expenses that you have. I also like to say a first good goal for an emergency savings fund is 1 month's rent or 1 month of your mortgage payment. So that if you are short, that top priority expense will be covered, and that will buy you some time. So you can start to think of it in that way, build towards that first month of a housing expense, and then go on from there. And the other thing, real quick, about an emergency savings fund is if you need it, you use it. You don't feel bad about using it, because, if you get into that spot where, you can't pay for an expense, it's important to access that. Another important part of budgeting is planning for periodic expenses. These are things that we don't pay for necessarily monthly, but they can add up to a lot. Sometimes your water and sewage bill can be a quarterly bill, for example. Garbage collection can be a quarterly bill, sometimes taxes, car insurance, sometimes things like that, any tuition payments you might have, they could all be quarterly expenses. So they can kind of throw you off if you're not preparing for them. So what you want to do is you want to include those in your monthly budget. So you want to identify all of those periodic expenses that you might have: insurance, water and sewage, even sometimes subscriptions or registration fees maybe that you have coming up. Pet care can be a periodic expense. But you want to figure out what those are and what those look like in your monthly budget. And then you want to plan for them each month. So let's say you have a water bill that's $210 every quarter. So you set aside $70 each month. And then when the water bill is due, you have the $210 because it's really just another $70 out of your monthly bill or monthly budget that that you're already used to setting aside. So these can be something that can help stabilize your finances instead of maybe trying to rob Peter to pay Paul on a larger periodic expenses due. Another key to budgeting success is thinking about how you're grocery shopping. Usually our food costs is one of our greatest costs in our monthly budget after our housing expense, even more than usually what we are paying for utilities. So think about what you're spending at the grocery store, and we can usually have a pretty big impact on what we're spending there by just changing a few things. Like I said for myself earlier, I shop with a very detailed list. I plan out our meals usually from Saturday through Thursday, plan out our lunches. So one, we're eating at home more often. We're not tempted to get takeout, which can also add into some unexpected costs. And then it has me prepared when I go to the grocery store. So then I'm not going to the store multiple times a week, because when you're going to the store multiple times per week, you're getting more than what you need and you're spending more than what you anticipate. So shop with your list, shop at different stores. I usually shop at 2 different stores. Use coupons. I don't use coupons, I will say that. But use coupons if that's your thing. Consider store brands and really just try and buy the things that you need, not necessarily the extras that are enticing.
Heather, we do have a question if you're ready to
Sure.
take one.
Yep.
Jamie did ask, should emergency fund only be an account in a financial institution, or should you at least a part of it be stored as cash?
I mean, that's really, that's up to you. There's always, when you're using a financial institution, there is more security. When you have a savings account, sometimes there is some potential for some interest growth. So I do say a financial institution is probably the better way to go. Cash can sometimes be too accessible. But when you have an emergency savings fund, you do want it to be accessible. So you don't want it to be like tucked away into a bank where you actually have to go into the bank, or a credit union that you actually have to go into and access the funds. So, you do want it to be something that you could easily access online and move into your account, when something like that would occur that you would need to use it. But for something, maybe you have a different savings goal, like you're saving for a vacation. Maybe you want to put that into an account where it's not accessible to you, where it's a little bit difficult to get to. Anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay. So some cost cutting tips that can help you reduce some of your monthly costs. The big one is cable versus internet. Um, Cable bills are, really expensive now. And sometimes we find that we're not watching cable, we're watching a lot of streaming services, and streaming services make a lot more things accessible nowadays. So we find a lot of people are going for an internet package over cable. So that is usually a pretty easy cut right now. Cell phone versus landline. I think everyone uses a cell phone anymore. I still have a landline, I will say, because I don't get great cell phone reception in my house. But if you still have a landline and you don't use it, that could be, something to think about cutting. Um, don't grocery shop when you're hungry. That can be pretty obvious as a cost cutting tip, but it really does make a difference. Or don't take people who are hungry when you go grocery shopping either. Stock up on some seasonal sales. So right now, is a good time to go into the store and look at what they have on sale from their winter items. And maybe you can pick some things up for next season. Look at, excuse me, look at ways to reduce your energy usage. I know last year when we were home, at the beginning of the pandemic and over the summer, um, our energy costs were ridiculous. And it was just from everybody being at home and not being conscious about it. So once we got that first electric bill, we really tried to buckle down and made some changes, which we did see reduce our electricity cost. And then this is kind of obvious too, but drink more water and less expensive beverages like sodas or energy drinks or coffee. You would be surprised at how those things can add up over time. And water is, always better for you anyways. Any questions on budgeting before we move on to credit? Nope. Okay. Okay, so we're going to talk about credit now. So the first thing we want to talk about when we're considering our credit report is where to access it. So as a consumer, you are entitled to a free credit report from each of the 3 credit bureaus once a year. So you can get 3 per year. The best way to access this credit report is through annualcreditreport.com. It is an online website. It is secure, but you do have to put in your social security number and your date of birth. They will ask you some questions based on your financial history and financial practices to confirm your identity. But it is a secure site. When you go onto the site, you can choose to either get 1 credit report or you can get all 3 credit reports. The 3 credit bureaus are Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. If you have not looked at your credit report in a long time, you probably want to get all 3 of them. You just want to make sure that everything that's on there is accurate. But ideally, we want to make this a routine financial practice. So you want to get one, about once every 4 months. If you're not comfortable with using the website, you can call and request it over the phone. There is some information that you do have to provide to them. And then you can also send a request form, which you can get online, to Annual Credit Report Request Service. You are filling out the form with all your personal information and sending it in the mail. So, that's something to to be aware of. And then on your credit report, this can sometimes be a big disappointment. It does not include your credit score. It's only your credit history. But if you do want to see your score, Experian has a great tool, freecreditscore.com. Now there are services that you can buy up and buy into, but the basic service is free. So that's another reputable site to go on, get your credit report and your credit score. It's only your Experian report though, and your Experian calculated score through that site. but it does give you a lot of great information, and it does give you the score for free. So several different people can see a credit report. Anyone who's granting you credit, so credit card application, bank loan, they look at your credit report. Collection agencies look at your credit report. Insurance companies, when you're switching your car insurance, they do a credit check on you. They did a study many years ago that found that consumers with lower credit scores tended to have more insurance claims. So they can't deny you credit based on your credit score, but they can charge you more for it. In some states, that is an illegal practice, though. Pennsylvania, it is not. It is legal. And then also employers will sometimes look at your credit report to consider you for employment applications. So the information that you see on your credit report is all of your identifying information, date of birth, social security number. You do want to make sure that your social is truncated if you print it out. Your employment information can be on there. That information comes from creditors, so it may not be current if you haven't applied for credit recently. All of your credit information is on there, so all of your secured and unsecured credit accounts. Public record information is on there. If you have any child support obligations, if you have any liens against you, or if you've ever filed for bankruptcy, that information is also on there. And then inquiries are on there. So when you have your credit pulled for different various applications, that information shows up on there. And then also when we receive the advertisements in the mail, marketing different credit cards to us, those inquiries are on there as well. Information stays on your credit report for a set period of time. Anything that you pay as agreed is on there for up to 10 years. Anything not paid as agreed is on for 7 years, and it should fall off after that. Collection accounts are on there for 7 years. If you file a bankruptcy, Chapter 7, that's on for 10 years from the file date. Chapter 13 is 7 years. Any unpaid tax liens are on there indefinitely. Foreclosures are on there for 7 years, and paid or unpaid judgments are on there for 7 years from the file date. Another item that's on your credit report indefinitely is your student loans. Those do not fall off your credit report until they are paid for. So if you are in deferment or forbearance, those will remain on your credit report. They do not apply. The 7-year rule does not apply to your student loans. All credit reports may have an error on them. It is, a human process. 1 in 4 credit reports we found have an error on them. So there is a dispute process for that. You have to typically do it in writing. I think 2 of the credit bureaus now, though, do have online dispute processes. You can request the incorrect information be deleted or corrected. The credit bureau does have to investigate this. The onus is on them to prove whether the information is correct. You have to send your evidence to them, but then they have to verify. They do have to notify you within 30 days. It might not always be resolved within 30 days, but they do have to respond to your dispute within 30 days. If they can't verify that the information is correct, it does have to be removed from your credit report. But if it's a gray area where maybe the information is correct, but maybe the reason behind it is, something that, just happened, you can add your dispute to your credit file. You can explain your side of the story in a 100-word statement. And then if the information is deemed to be inaccurate and it is deleted from your credit report, you will receive a free copy, as will anyone else who requested your credit in the past 6 months. So your credit score, and this is really, what everybody is usually the most interested in when it comes to our credit. But it's important to remember the credit score comes from all of the pieces of information that are on our credit report. So, it's just as important to look at that information as it is to look at the score. So typically, scores range from 300 to 900. The Fair Isaac Company, FICO, that is the most commonly used score. The 3 credit bureaus each use their own version of the FICO score. So you might notice that if you pull your 3 credit reports and you look at your scores, each one might be slightly different, and that's just because they might calculate each one a little bit differently. And your score will change as positive and negative information is added to your credit file. Your score is really a kind of like a living and breathing thing. It grows, it declines, but it's all within our power to change it. So your credit score, if your score is 730 or higher, you are in the excellent range. You're qualifying for the best interest rates. 700 to 729 is good. You're still getting decent interest rates. 670 to 699, you will need a closer look. They're going to scrutinize you a little bit more, and your interest rates will not be as low as someone in those higher tiers. 585 to 669, you're in a higher risk category. You still will be approved for some things. You can still get a mortgage in that range, but you're definitely a higher risk. And 584 and lower either means no credit or limited credit. So creditors equate no credit history with bad credit because they don't have anything to judge, what kind of credit user you are. So how do they calculate your score? 35% is your payment history. That is the most impactful part of your credit score. So how you pay your bills each month. So if you don't remember anything about what I say today, the takeaway is pay your bills and pay them on time because it really does make a difference. Creditors like to see that you are a responsible borrower and that they can trust you to pay your debts as agreed. 30% of your credit is the amount that you owe. So if you have 5 credit cards, each one has a $2,000 credit limit and you're maxed out on all 5. So you have $10,000 in credit card debt and no credit available to you. That's going to impact your score in a negative way. Creditors like to see that you do have credit available to you if the unexpected happens. They want you to have some wiggle room on those types of accounts. So let's say you pay off one credit card for $2,000 and then you close that card. So now you have 4 credit cards, $8,000 in debt, but you paid off one full card. So you think, oh, that should help me, but it doesn't help you really. It helps you by you're managing your debt better, but you still don't have credit available to you. So pay off your accounts, but keep your cards open. And there is always, some wiggle room there too. You don't want to have like hundreds of credit cards, but you want to keep some of your cards open that you pay off, even if you're not going to use them. Which, depending on how the market is, sometimes creditors will close cards that aren't being used as well. But it's just something to keep in mind. 15% of your credit score is the length of your credit history. So you always want to keep your oldest cards open, no matter what the scenario is, because they do look at the length of how long you've been using credit. 10% of your credit score is new credit. So every time you apply for a credit card or a loan, there is a hit to your credit score. Usually it's in the 5 to 10 point range, which, multiple hits at one time, that can take your score down, 50 points if you do 5 credit applications. So, it's something to keep in mind. Only apply for the credit that you actually need. And 10% of your credit score is the types of credit that you utilize. So creditors don't want to see a credit report of all credit cards. They want a healthy mix of credit. So, a mortgage, installment loans, car loan, credit cards. So it's not just one type of credit that you're utilizing. So different mistakes that you might make can have a negative impact on your score. So, like we were saying, if you have a maxed out credit card and your score is in the 680 range, you're going to go down 10 to 30 points. If your score is in that higher range, you're going to go down 25 to 45 points. So typically the rule of thumb is the higher your credit score, the more impactful these credit mistakes are. A 30-day late payment in the lower range, you're down 60 to 80 points, higher range, 90 to 110 points. So, that's why I say, making your payments on time and not skipping payments is really critical to your credit report. When we say a late payment, though, we don't mean a day or two late. You're talking either a 15-day late payment, a 30-day late payment, or you're really skipping that payment. The greatest impact on your credit score is bankruptcy. No matter where you are, that's taking you back down to the beginning. So you're just going to have to rebuild from there. Sometimes bankruptcy is the only option, though, for consumers that are struggling with debt. And it is an option for a reason. So anyone that has to choose that course to get back on track, there's nothing wrong with that. It was created to help consumers recover from debt that's really unrecoverable from. So, you don't feel bad about filing for bankruptcy. It is a tool to help you achieve some more financial stability. So there are certain things that do not go into your FICO score. They don't look at your race, color, religion, sex, or marital status. They don't look at your age, where you live. They don't take into account your salary, your occupation, or your employer. Lenders look at that, though. They don't look at certain inquiries from an employer, and they don't look at any reported child support or family obligations that are on your credit report. So the big thing about why should you care what your credit score is, you want to think of your credit as a tool to achieve your financial goals. So if you just look at this chart, the difference in the interest rate and the amount of interest that you're going to pay on a $150,000 30-year fixed rate mortgage is pretty startling when you look at the high and the low end of your credit score ranges. So if you're on that higher range, you're going to pay about $108,000 in interest. If you're on the lower range, you're paying about $160,000 in interest. So you're talking about almost a $50,000 difference there. And that's substantial. So, you want to have that money in your pocket, not in the lender's pocket. Even from the top end to the second to the lowest, you're still talking about $30,000. So, it's a substantial difference when you have a higher credit score. These financial products are more easily accessible and more affordable to you. Any questions on credit before we move on to some COVID tips? And then I think we will have some time at the end too for some questions.
I don't see anything, Heather.
Victoria? Nothing? Is that what you said?
Nothing. No, I don't see anything just yet. Thank you.
Okay, great. So these are just a few tips for dealing with your finances during the COVID pandemic. First thing is, you want to look at your budget again. We're spending money differently now. Is there anything that you can look at where you can reduce spending even further? Or are there some areas where you can save a little bit more during this time? I'm not driving as much, so I'm not spending as much money in gas, or we're not going out to eat as much. We order takeout, and even though you order takeout, you're still not spending what you would spend when you would go into a restaurant. You want to stay in touch with your creditors. So if you have some credit card debt and you're struggling with that, a lot of the credit card companies are offering deferments right now. So they will defer your payment. Now, the interest is still accruing. That's important to remember. But they will work with you on making that monthly payment, and they're not reporting it to the credit bureaus as a late payment or as a missed payment. So, if that's an area of pressure for you, don't hesitate to contact them. Also reach out to your utility companies if you're struggling with any utility payments. There is still a moratorium on shutoffs for utility services in Pennsylvania. So you're not in danger of your utility getting shut off. And a lot of times they are working with consumers on helping to manage any payments that they're struggling with. You also want to talk to your lenders. So maybe it's not a credit card, maybe it is a car loan, or it is your mortgage. You know, give them a call if you are struggling and having difficulty making that payment, or if you're worried that you're not going to be able to make that payment. They are also still offering deferments during this time, and the foreclosure moratorium has been extended. So, you want to think about that and, try and prepare the best you can for when the moratorium is lifted if you're struggling with that mortgage payment. And then, we also want to think about our mental health. So staying active and staying hopeful, it's really important right now. And, to utilize these other things that can help you manage some stressful situations when it comes to finances. Just don't lose hope, and, try to reach out and see if there's anything that can help ease your mind during this time. Another thing that you want to think about is protecting yourself and your identity. There are a lot of scam artists out there right now trying to take advantage of different situations. Whether it's the latest stimulus bill or the potential stimulus check, filing your taxes right now, not going to a reputable tax preparer can sometimes get you into a sticky situation. And even right now, there's a lot of scams around vaccines. So they're taking personal information, they're charging people, and they're not, reputable or qualified providers. They're not going to get you the vaccine even if you pay them $100. These are all very controlled processes in Pennsylvania. So just be aware of that and make sure all your loved ones are aware of that. Don't give out any personal account information over the phone or the internet unless you have initiated that kind of contact. And just hang up the phone or don't answer if you think that this is a scam call. And scam artists have really gotten sophisticated, and they can, really make you think that this is a legit offer, when most of the time, if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. So that about wraps up my presentation. I will tell you, give you a little bit more information about our agency now. We are a nonprofit organization. We're headquartered in Pittsburgh. We have an office in Pittston, Pennsylvania. We also have an office in Lemoyne, Harrisburg, Lemoyne, Altoona, and Greensburg, as well as our Pittsburgh headquarters. We've been in business since 1968. We offer budget and credit counseling, which those services are free. All of our housing counseling services are free. So if you think you're struggling with your mortgage payment or you're concerned about that, you can talk to one of our HUD certified counselors. We're a partner with the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency. Doesn't hurt to give us a call, and even if you just want to go through your budget, look at some things more in-depthly. And our counselors can help you figure out, some ways to better manage your money. We have a lot of great resources on our website. We also have an online budgeting program that you can utilize that's also free. And then we also offer something called a debt management program. That is where you consolidate your credit card debt into one monthly payment. The payment is made to us, and then we disperse that payment to your creditors. Your debt is paid off in full in 5 years. Where you see savings is on the interest rates. Creditors will reduce your interest rate when you're working with an agency like ours. There is a fee for this service. There's a $50 setup fee and a maximum $50 monthly fee. Those fees are regulated by the Pennsylvania Department of Banking and Securities. You have to be licensed by them to offer debt management services. But it is a great tool for someone who just isn't making any headway on their debt because of um, the interest rates, and just trying to manage through that. Sometimes it helps to contact someone like us and get that part of your financial life under control. So I think we definitely have time for questions. If anybody has any, you don't have to put them in the chat unless everyone's muted. I don't know, Victoria, or they can ask or.
They look muted, but they can always.
Okay.
Looks like we lost a couple people. Well, thank you so much, Heather. This was great. And I can't wait to put
Good.
it on our website for everyone else to see. We
Oh,
really
good.
appreciate your time today, and
Yeah, thank you.
look forward to working with you in the future. Some really great tips, especially during a pandemic like we're in right
Yeah, great. Thank you for reaching out, and I appreciate the opportunity to share.
now. Awesome. Well, we look forward to hearing from you again in the future, and take care.
Okay, thanks, Victoria.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.